Would you like to see crosses, blood, and nudity? Well, that's the sort of stuff that Americans can't see because we need protecting from the evil Japanese video game market. Before I take a look at the differences between the two versions, first let me show you the game itself. Super Castlevania was one of the Super Nintendo's first launch titles, and it's a very good game. Just look at these multiple backgrounds and layers here, especially at the beginning when you can go in between the gates. And the game even rotates the screen on you. You have to latch your whip onto this chain so that you don't get flung into the spikes as the room rotates around. And then after you fight some enemies, you gotta do it again. Of course, nothing happens, so logic dictates that the only option to do is to jump down, right? That's completely wrong. What you have to do is wait for the bricks to come. Also, these swinging chandeliers are pretty cool. But enough about graphics meant to show off the Super Nintendo's hardware. The levels are cool as there is a ton of variety, everything from walls you have to move through to avoid being crushed, platforms that flip, swinging with your whip, attacking enemies that break into others, running through a bridge that turns into bats, fighting against the water current, and running upwards as fast as you can to avoid a spiked wall of doom. Your whip is your main weapon, and you can swing it in 8 directions, 10 if you count ducking, but you can also do this thing. It's rarely useful, but it's really cool to play around with. You also have sub-weapons. Those include a knife, holy water, an axe, the most useless weapon in the game, time freeze, and the cross boomerang. Speaking of weapons, what does this sound remind you of? It's a weapon from somewhere. Think about it. Konami and Capcom reused many of their sound effects in much of their games. The sound is from Contra 3, The Alien Wars. Or in this case, Super Protectobots as it's known in Europe. The main sprites were changed to look like robots, as are the opening cinematic and pictures after every level. There is no difference, however, between the Japanese and American versions. And now let's get off this tangent and into the differences between the American and Japanese version of Castlevania. Difference number 1. First, let's watch the Japanese opening sequence. Now, watch the American version. Can you tell the difference? The cross from the grave has been removed, and Dracula was misspelled in English on the Japanese version, so it was simply removed from the American version. Difference number 2. Title screens. Number 3. Blood is also used in level 8 with blood waterfalls, blood dripping from the ceiling, and motes of blood you can die in. It's pretty creepy. But in the American version, guess what? Slime! I don't see why when, years earlier, there were games like this. Difference number 4. Back to the crosses. All crosses have been removed. There are nude statues in the Japanese version, but they're covered up in the American version. This doesn't make any sense though because Medusa is still nude. Number 6. There was no slowdown in the game. Nothing ever freezes, no matter how many enemies are on the screen. But for some reason this happens sometimes in the American version. Difference number 7. All the bosses move faster in this game, and I'll use 3 examples specifically. The giant skull's bricks drop faster on you in this version, and you also have less time to dodge anything on this guy. Then, there's this boss. In the American version, you can hit him immediately as he lands to the ground, but in the Japanese, you actually have to wait 3 seconds before you can hit him again, which usually ends up in you getting hit. And then finally, Death. Death is freaking speedy.